Well, we're covering the World Economic Forum from Davos in Switzerland. Economics editor Tshepo Mongoai is there for us, and he's speaking to a slew of different leaders who are there to talk about strategies, one of them being the area of monetary policy. Tshepo Mongoai, a very good afternoon to you. Tell us more.
We are busy with the national broadcaster. You are foreign.
Good afternoon to you, Nampu. And of course, we're still here at the World Economic Forum that's taking place in Davos in Switzerland. It's a hive of activity. The number of leaders who have arrived here yesterday, and some are still arriving as we speak. At the center is discussions on a number of issues that affect global economy and politics as well. And of course, one of the issues you correctly pointed out is the monetary policy that we have seen in several years and recent years in terms of rate decisions that have been taken due to high inflation. But we've seen that the picture has definitely improved with globally inflation coming down. And for more on this, we are joined by the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, I Lesetja Kganyago. Governor, thank you very much for your time. How are the engagement, especially around inflation and monetary policy?
Well, inflation and monetary policy seem to have been a side event. The big discussions are what is happening with the global economy and what is happening with the fragmentation of the global economy and what that actually means for the economic outlook. The big discussions, of course, are about the protectionist policies that are pursued by the major economies, and in particular, the uncertainty about what would happen with the trade policy of the United States. And what is in no doubt has been that it is difficult to analyze what the exact impact on the economy would be. There are so many moving parts, and that what we have seen is that the rise in protectionist measures leads to a fragmentation of the global economy, one. Two, it could lead to a decline in global trade, and global trade is the lifeblood of the global economy. What does that actually mean for central banks? It means that central banks are operating in an environment of increased uncertainty that they are actually not having much control of, but that environment is impacting on the environment in which central banks are actually operating. And so, you had the great inflation of 2022. Central banks responded to that inflation with very aggressive monetary policy tightening. The disinflation process started in 2024 early, and towards the mid-year and towards the end of the year, central banks started to reduce the restrictiveness of monetary policy. South Africa also did the same, starting in September. The problem that everybody is coming to grips with at the moment is that these protectionist measures could actually slow down, halt, or even reverse the disinflationary process. And if that happens, that means that central banks might have to pause or even reverse the process of reducing the restrictiveness of monetary policy as they are concerned about inflation. So, geopolitics, geofragmentation, impact on the global economy, what does this mean for the environment of central banking? It leads to this thing that we had seen about a possibility of a rise in inflation. But I said to you that this environment is uncertain. There are so many moving parts. So the announcements that came out yesterday led to a decline in the oil price. Now, for South Africa, we are an oil importer. Our currency had depreciated. The oil price has declined. It's a question of what the net effect of those will be on the inflation outlook. And lastly, if the major central banks pause or reverse the course of reducing monetary policy restrictiveness, that would mean that you are having global conditions that are tighter for long and has got implications thus for capital flows for small open economies like that of ours. So there are so many moving parts. The environment of monetary policy is never going to be boring going forward.
As the South African Reserve Bank, you've mentioned a couple of factors, especially that have been discussed here, and in a way they could be inflationary. In your outlook and projections, you feel you have factored in some of those facts that you've just touched on?
No, we couldn't factor them in because we didn't know what they were going to be. And that is why you saw that in our previous monetary policy statement, we released scenarios to say that if this following happens, this is what we see as the scenario. If this happens, this would be what the scenario is. It's been very difficult to model the impact of policies that, one, you do not know what they are. Two, now that we know what they are, exactly what the effect will be on the outlook is a challenge that not just the South African Reserve Bank faces, but many other central banks face. We had highlighted the risks to the inflation outlook, being what happens to the exchange rate, what happens to the oil price, and what happens to global inflation. For us, what we had seen had been that the disinflation process in South Africa was driven not just by a restrictive monetary policy stance, but was also driven by a decline in food prices and a decline in fuel prices. But over the past 3 to 4 months, we had seen a constant rise in the fuel price at the pump, and that counts for something. And we, again, the environment is uncertain, so we highlighted those as risks to the inflation outlook. But these measures that are being taken also have implications for the growth outlook, because, as I had said, we are a small, open economy. For our commodity sector, commodities, we have the commodities. If the other countries do not have them, they'll have to get them from us. What is of concern is what happens to our manufactured exports, because those would be affected by the level of global economic activity.
All right, thank you very much. That's it, the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, I Lesetja Kganyago. A lot of fragmentation, protectionist measures that are being taken by various countries. And of course, that has an impact on measures that are being taken to contain inflation globally, but also for South Africa. There are several risks that have been highlighted, external and internally in South Africa, like the higher electricity prices as one of the factors that can push up inflation in South Africa. With that, from the World Economic Forum, it's back to in studio.
All right. Thank you so much, Tshepo Mongoai. He's our economics editor out in Davos for us.